Lindsay Bach, welcome to Are We There Yet? Capturing the Evolving New Now in Learning. Delighted to have you here since you've had experiences much different than many of the people we're talking to. You were on site on campus at University of Southern California before the pandemic started. You were in Madrid as a study abroad student when the pandemic hit, which cut your study abroad short, came back, finished your degree online, which certainly wasn't what you expected. And now you've been out of the workforce for a year, having made the transition from on-site to overseas to online to working both on-site and online. So let's start off with right at the heart of Pandemic Central. March 2020, you're in Madrid. What happened when you found out that you were going to have to go home and things were shutting down?
Right. So what happened was first we got notice that classes would be canceled for a couple weeks, which was honestly a rather welcome surprise at the time. But that was obviously followed with news that I think Trump made a statement that at 12 on whatever Friday that was, Americans would have to be back in the States by that time, but he didn't specify whether he meant noon or midnight. So it caused this big panic amongst the students that were still stuck in Madrid. Everyone was panic buying flights for these crazy prices. And by the time I flew out, which was I think 3 p.m. on that Friday, because I safely betted that it would be midnight, the whole city was cleared out. I couldn't even buy a mask anywhere. Those had been bought out. All of my American student friends had left. So it was a really crazy whirlwind for those few days.
And that obviously was a major disruption to your learning. What did you do to deal with the new situation in learning as you were making the arrangements to go home and then getting instructions from your university about what was going to happen next?
In all honesty, I didn't really have the time to really process what was going on and prepare myself for the learning that was going to happen once I got back into the States. I think that once I got there, all of my professors in Madrid were obviously very understanding that it would take some time for everyone to get settled, to make sure they had a stable Wi-Fi connection and room to take these Zoom calls away from their parents or their other family members. And yeah, how else did I prepare? I think at the time it felt really like just going through the motions, making sure I had to have a conversation with my mom to ask her to please do not come into my room when I'm trying to learn. It was interesting to have to set those boundaries again because it sort of felt like I was in high school when I was in my third year of college. So I think it was a lot about setting those personal boundaries and just being told what was coming next by my professors.
Didn't even occur to me that when you came back, you were still working with the professors there in Madrid. How did that work out?
Yeah, well, they were very accommodating of our schedule. So I think our classes all happened in the morning, which meant they happened at night for them. So every time they'd turn on their camera, it'd be completely dark around them and we could usually hear their kids or something like that. So it was interesting. I think a lot of empathy was practiced, and especially that semester to finish out those couple months as to what situation everyone was finding themselves in.
What sort of things did the instructors do to make you feel more at home with learning and to make that switch from on-site to online in such a short period of time?
I think that especially when we first got sent back, there was not a huge rush to jump back exactly where we had left off in our course material. I'm aware that I'm pretty sure they cut a good amount of our curriculum out, I think, that semester, because there's about 3 weeks where everyone was just dealing with what news was to come. And I think that helped a lot because it created space in those first few online classes for people to just react to what was going on, to make sure everyone was okay, to have kind of some semblance of organic conversations that you have if you're in a real classroom where you're bumping into someone before class starts or something like that. I think people were more willing to hop online for those Zoom classes 10 minutes early in order to have those interactions with their classmates, because I think people were more shocked by the loneliness of virtual learning at the time. So I think that definitely made the transition a lot easier. It felt like I was still very close to my classmates and my professors. Yeah, and I think that also all professors were incredibly lenient with deadlines. They were incredibly lenient with whatever your circumstances were and how they would affect your ability to attend class or if you could have your camera on or not. So that was definitely really helpful.
You've alluded to the sense of having a little bit of conversation before the session, so there was not so much loneliness or the possibility of loneliness. Was that set up as a formal cohort where you knew everybody and you were all taking the same classes at the same time?
Yeah, it was. Within the cohort, I think there's like 8 different class options. So there are definitely some people in the cohort that I didn't have classes with. So once I got sent home, I essentially never saw those people again. But the people that I took classes with, I grew close to because we took the same 2 to 4 classes together.
And that was for that one semester, or how long did that cohort stay together?
Just that one semester. It was just the kids from USC that stayed abroad in Madrid that semester.
Think back to what learners may still be struggling with online learning could learn from you. Are there any basic tips beyond what you've already described that you want to offer them and say, hey, if you do this, it's going to make life easier, and here's going to be the positive outcome for you?
I'm trying to think of what virtual learner I'd be talking to right now, because I think that the virtual learner that I was it felt like I was put into a situation that I had no control over. So I think if I was talking to someone in a similar situation, it would really be to just like try not to focus on how your virtual education might seem like it's pales in comparison to what you remembered of in-person education. Focus on like what doors it might open to be able to study from home and attend class from home, and like how that opens up time for yourself to like, I don't know, do more of the things that you enjoy later on, or to have more of a separation between like school and home. I think that it would be better use of my time, or it would have been better use of my time to focus on the silver linings rather than to feel like I was cheated, like I said, which it was not productive in the end, but I'm sure that it was important in my healing and moving forward.
Did you have support either from your peers or from people that were on faculty or staff at the university who helped you through those periods where that sense of being cheated might have taken you down a bit?
I think that just like my friends, so fellow students, like felt similarly. But in all honesty, I was really blessed to have been living with like some of my closest friends. So not that much time was spent like dwelling on how it sucked unless we were all having a particularly bad day. So I can't be more thankful for the fact that I loved the people that I lived with and how that created sort of a social environment for me, because it was me and 3 other roommates. So I think solidarity mostly came from other students.
That's something that we have to acknowledge a lot of people just didn't have. There were a lot of learners that were by themselves or living in a home where 3 or 4 people were fighting over the same computer. The parents may have been working, the student was trying to get online. It sounds like you didn't have that. Did you have bandwidth problems? In fact, living with 3 or 4 other students and trying to get all on Wi-Fi or whatever system you were using to do your lessons?
Yeah, that did happen actually quite often.
How did you deal with that?
Like I said, professors were more understanding. So I would just send an email from my phone to my professor saying like, hey, I'm having trouble getting on. I'll hop on as soon as I can. And that was never an issue.
Putting this back in perspective, in case anybody's watching this and doesn't know when this was done, we're talking in September of 2022, and you've been out in the workplace for a year now. Are you mostly on-site, mostly online, or is it a combination of on-site and online work at the job you've got?
So the vision was for it to be hybrid work. But the company I work at has its own like metric system for tracking like COVID trends in New York City, which is where I am. And because of that, I think I have gone into the office 2 times in the last year. So it's been almost entirely virtual.
So sort of once the pandemic hit, it set you up to be used to working with people online, regardless of whether you were in school or at work.
Right. Yeah, definitely. It was the 2 times I went in, I will say, were like incredibly exciting because it's like my first real job. It was very nice to have like the nerves of like walking into a real building. So I hope that one day the hybrid schedule stabilizes and I'll have that chance to see people in person again. But yeah, for now, I really can't complain. It's been really nice.
Good.
No, not anything I can think of right now.
Any final thoughts you want to offer people in terms of, okay, instructors, here's what you ought to be looking at, and students, here's what you ought to be thinking about, because we're in this for a good long time?
Yeah, I think that I don't even know how to deliver the message for it to really hit, but for students especially, I would say like it is much cooler to like go to class and like turn your camera on, and the impact that has on the other students to turn their camera on and care and try is astounding, and it makes the whole experience a lot better. I wish I could have said that to myself too, because it is a lot easier to just log on into whatever, be eating or doing something else while you're in class, but it's worth it to just like go a little bit extra, I think. As for teachers, I think that, like I said, I mean, I've said the same thing a number of times now, but I would just like to like thank teachers for their continued empathy for students that are still studying from home and might not be in super stable situations, whether it come to Wi-Fi or to whatever else. So
Lindsay, thank you very much. Thanks for sharing the experiences you had and hopefully giving some solace to others and some encouragement to others. As always, looking forward to the next conversation we set up whenever we set that up.